The night I first heard the gunfire in Tepalcatepec, I was crouched behind a crumbling concrete pole, soaked in sweat and gasoline. The air smelled of burning rubber and wet earth. Above me, tracer bullets carved red slashes through the sky, lighting up the street like a cursed fireworks show. I gripped my radio so tightly, my knuckles bled through the cracks in my skin. Static crackled in my ear, then the voice came. Gavilan, 4, confirm movement. Do not engage. I wanted to run. God knows I wanted to run. But I couldn't. My job wasn't to fight, it was to see, to watch, to report. And tonight, that meant watching Tepalcatepec burn. It started with 10 black trucks, no plates, no headlights, racing down the main road like hounds released from hell. They weren't our men. I recognized the emblems on the windshields. Caballeros Templarios, rivals, and they came loaded for war. I whispered into the radio. Code red, 10 units northern flank, my voice trembling like a dying leaf. The response came back cold and sharp. Copied. Maintain position. Don't move. Don't die. CJNG's answer arrived minutes later, a swarm of armored vehicles with mounted rifles and masked gunmen. When the two forces met in front of the plaza, the world went silent for a single breath. Then the storm hit. The sounds were unbearable. Screams, gunshots, metal tearing through flesh. I saw a boy not older than me, 17 maybe, take a round to the neck and collapse like a puppet with its strings cut. His radio kept emitting that high-pitched tone long after he hit the ground. I kept reporting. That's all I could do. 5 more units. South flank. Repeat, south flank. My fingers were shaking so hard I nearly dropped the damn radio. By dawn, the streets were scorched buildings in ruins, bodies sprawled like broken toys. Smoke curled up toward the pale morning sky, and I was still there, crouched behind my pole-numb radio against my ear, whispering coordinates into a void. That was the night I realized I wasn't just a lookout. I was a cog in something monstrous. I was a halcón, a falcon, in service to a man the world called El Mencho. But I knew something they didn't. The world thought Nemesio Oseguera was just a narco, just another kingpin with guns and cocaine. But that's not where the real money came from. That's not where the power lived. The true business, the billion-dollar machine that made the drug trade look like child's play, was something else. Something cold, silent, legal on paper, and rotting at the core. And I saw it. I saw it all. You think Mencho runs on meth? Let me show you how he buys judges with invoices. I was born in a place where dreams don't grow. They survive if they're lucky. My neighborhood on the outskirts of Jalisco wasn't on any tourist map. It was a maze of tin roofs, dirt roads, and the kind of silence that comes from generations of people learning not to ask questions. My father disappeared when I was 9. No funeral, no goodbye, just gone like so many men who couldn't choose between hunger and humiliation. My mother Lourdes worked the stalls in the Central Market. She sold tamarind candies and cigarettes by the stick, her hands always red and cracked from the vinegar and chili she packed into plastic bags for extra pesos. She was never home before dark and always returned with swollen feet and eyes that tried not to cry in front of me. I was the oldest, which meant I was the man of the house before I could shave. Some days I skipped school to help her carry crates or to watch my younger brother outside the prep school. I remember standing at the gates watching the other boys step out with shiny new sneakers and cell phones, laughing about weekend parties and family vacations. I had holes in my soles and just enough coins in my pocket for a soda. I didn't envy them. I just didn't understand why I had to feel so invisible. In places like mine, the cartel isn't a threat. It's gravity. You don't seek it out. It finds you. It waits for you to be young, fast, and desperate. I was 16 when they came. I wasn't hiding. I wasn't doing anything wrong. Just waiting for my brother outside school, chewing stale gum and watching the clouds turn orange with the setting sun. The black SUV pulled up so quietly I didn't hear it until the engine cut off. 2 men got out. One tall, with tattoos snaking up his neck and a crooked smile that reeked of gunpowder. The other younger, his stare cold enough to pierce through skin. The tall one stepped forward. "What's your name, Moro?" My mouth went dry. In those days, a blacked-out truck stopping in front of you only had 2 endings. You got recruited or you vanished. I answered. He laughed. "You're quick." "That's good. We need eyes. Just look and report. That's it. No shooting. No moving dope. Just keep watch and talk into a radio." Then came the real hook. 100 a week. Cash. Plus bonuses if your info's good. And don't worry, we protect our own. 100 pesos a week, more than my mother made in 4 days. It sounded like salvation. No contracts, no uniforms, just a job. I didn't know then that it was a collar disguised as opportunity. A leash dressed like freedom. That night, I lay in bed with the money tucked inside my pillow. My mother asked where it came from. I told her I helped move boxes in a warehouse. She smiled, thanked me, kissed my forehead. She didn't know the boxes were metaphors, and that her son had just signed up to watch people die. They handed me the radio in a used shoebox. It wasn't anything fancy, just a scratched-up walkie with a cracked antenna and a charger wrapped in duct tape. But to me, it felt like a weapon. Not because it could kill, but because it could summon death with a single word. My first assignment came the next morning. I didn't get a schedule. I didn't sign a paper. Just a text message with a time, a location, and 2 words, "Be invisible." They told me to stand near the Zapotlanejo highway on the edge of a dirt lot where buses came every hour. I was to pretend I was waiting for school headphones in backpack slung low, posture relaxed. Inside the backpack, under a crumpled notebook and a half-eaten sandwich, was the radio. I was instructed to report every 60 minutes using coded language. If everything was calm, Águila Uno. All quiet. If I spotted military vehicles, green arrived. State police, blue showed up. Federal cops, white approaching. And if anything felt off, strange movements, suspicious cars, unknown faces, red is moving. At first, it felt like a game. I imagined myself as a spy in a war movie, eyes sharp, nerves of steel. Nobody looked at me twice. I was just another bored teenager on his phone like thousands of others. But inside, I felt electric, powerful, dangerous. At the end of my first shift, a man I'd never seen before pulled up beside me in a rusted red pickup. He didn't say a word, just dropped a folded envelope through the window. When I opened it later, there were 5 crisp bills inside. I'd never held that much cash in my life. For the next few weeks, my life followed a rhythm: school in the morning, eyes on the street in the afternoon, reports every hour, envelope under my pillow by nightfall. I started walking differently, standing taller. I wasn't just some poor kid anymore. I was part of something bigger, or so I thought. The adrenaline was addictive. Every time I spotted a patrol car, every time I whispered a coded alert, I felt like I mattered, like I had value, like I was untouchable. What no one told me was that adrenaline is just a chemical leash. The more I craved it, the tighter it wrapped around my throat. One night, I asked the tattooed guy, the one who first recruited me, what would happen if I ever wanted out. He didn't answer. He just looked at me for a long time and smiled. "You already took the money, Moro. That means you're in. That means you're marked." I didn't understand what he meant until much later. But that night, I felt something shift. The radio, once my trophy, now felt heavier in my hands. It buzzed softly under my pillow as I fell asleep like a heartbeat that no longer belonged to me. I wasn't just carrying a radio. I was carrying a contract written in silence. And the price wasn't printed on the bills, it was hidden in what I'd never be allowed to say again. It happened on a Tuesday. I remember because it rained the night before, and my shoes were still damp when the black SUV pulled up outside my house. The same tattooed man from before stepped out. His smile wasn't playful this time. It was tighter, like it had been stapled onto his face. "Get dressed, Mauro," he said. "You're meeting the boss." He didn't say which boss. He didn't have to. There was only one name whispered with reverence and fear across the entire state of Jalisco. The name that made grown men lower their voices and women lock their doors early. The man who ruled like a ghost and punished like a god. El Mencho. The ride was silent. 3 others were in the truck with me, all boys around my age, maybe a little older. No one spoke. We just sat, our eyes glued to the road, trying to memorize every turn, every tree, every power line, as if knowing the route might one day save our lives. The landscape changed gradually from busy intersections and storefronts to dust-choked paths lined with barbed wire and forgotten shacks. We were heading toward the highlands outside Zapopan, the kind of place GPS signals vanish and graves are dug without markers. After an hour, we reached a sprawling ranch hidden among the hills. It wasn't luxurious, no fountains, no gold-plated gates, just function trucks, guards, radios, and rifles. We were told to line up beneath a mesquite tree that offered no shade, just thorns. The sun was brutal. Nobody moved. The silence buzzed in our ears louder than the cicadas. Then, after what felt like an eternity, a convoy arrived, 3 armored vehicles, windows tinted so dark they looked painted. One of them stopped a few meters away from us. The engine died, doors opened, and then he stepped out. He wasn't what I expected. No gold chains, no designer suits, no bodyguards fanning him with palm leaves. He wore a plain denim shirt, faded jeans, and worn-out boots. His mustache was neatly trimmed, and his eyes, dark, unreadable, surgical, scanned us like he was reading obituaries. This was El Mencho. He didn't speak right away. He walked slowly, deliberately down the line, stopping in front of each of us. When he got to me, he stared for a few seconds longer than the others. It wasn't just fear I felt, it was powerlessness, like standing in front of a mirror that didn't reflect your image, but your secrets. Then he spoke, and his voice was soft, almost calm. "Welcome. Here we don't play. Here we obey. You're not boys anymore. You're eyes. And without eyes, we are blind." His lieutenant, a wide-chested man called El Toro, stepped forward to lay down the law. Absolute loyalty. Total silence. Military discipline. Any mistake. Any betrayal. And we don't just kill you. We bury your entire bloodline. He didn't shout. He didn't need to. Every word fell like a hammer on stone. Some of the boys next to me shifted. One was breathing so hard I thought he might faint. Another clenched his fists until his knuckles turned bone white. I stayed still because I knew. This wasn't a job anymore. This wasn't a phase. This was a baptism. And the man who'd just welcomed us was no drug lord. He was a phantom, a myth with a heartbeat. And from that moment on, my life and my death belonged to him. The warehouse looked abandoned. Rusted shutters, broken lights, graffiti faded by sun and rain. It sat in El Salto, a dead corner of the industrial zone, where no one asked questions, and the streetlights stopped working years ago. My job that night was simple: stand near the bus stop, pretend to be waiting for a ride, and report any movement. I was told there wouldn't be trouble. Just a drop-off, the Guerro had said. Ojos abiertos, boca cerrada. eyes open, mouth shut. The air was thick with the smell of wet cement and diesel. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked, but otherwise it was dead quiet. Then came the engines. 3 black trucks rolled in without headlights, their tires kicking up dust that hung in the air like fog. They moved slow, deliberate like predators circling their prey. When they stopped in front of the warehouse, 10 men jumped out, all in tactical gear vests, balaclavas, rifles that glinted under the flickering yellow bulb above the door. From one of the houses across the street, they dragged out a man. He looked already half dead, hands bound behind his back, face swollen and purple, one eye sealed shut with dried blood. He stumbled and fell, and they kicked him until he stood again, wobbling like a marionette with cut strings. They lined him up against the wall. I knew what was coming. I knew because of the silence. Not a single voice. Not a single order. Just the sound of boots on gravel and the clicking of a safety being released. I pressed my radio to my lips. My voice caught. The command echoed in my head. Do not intervene. Just report. Águila Uno, I whispered. Neutral movement. Under control. It was a lie, or maybe the most honest thing I'd ever said. The shots rang out like thundercracks, fast and merciless. The kind of gunfire that doesn't stop after one burst. It goes on and on like the shooter is exercising something buried deep. I didn't watch, not directly, but I heard it. I heard the wet thud of a body hitting concrete, the gurgle of a final breath, the shuffle of boots walking away from what was once a man and now was just meat. And then one of them turned. He didn't raise his weapon. He didn't speak. He just looked at me. A long, steady stare. Then the smallest nod, like he was telling me, "We saw you. We know you were here. And you stayed." That was the real test. Not how fast you could talk on a radio, not how well you could spot a patrol, but whether you could stare death in the face and not flinch. That night, I went home with the smell of gunpowder soaked into my clothes. I showered twice. It didn't come off. My mother asked why I looked pale. I told her I had a stomach ache. She offered me tea. I said I'd be fine, but I wasn't. I lay in bed with my eyes wide open, replaying the sound of those final gasps over and over. Not because I was scared, but because I knew I had passed. I wasn't just a lookout anymore. I was a witness, a gear in a machine that didn't just watch it devoured. They started calling me more often after that night. I didn't ask questions, just answered the phone and showed up where I was told. The Giro, my supervisor, no longer treated me like a rookie. He'd hand me a different radio one, with a longer antenna and a green sticker on the side for eyes that don't blink, he said once. The code words became more complicated. I was no longer reporting patrols on street corners. Now I was coordinating shifts, assigning locations to other halcons, relaying instructions between zones. I didn't even realize I had climbed a rung until one day the Gero tossed me a backpack with cash and said, "Distribute this to the boys. You're in charge of Sector D." It wasn't a promotion. It was a trap disguised as a privilege. My pay jumped overnight from 100 pesos a week to 2,500 plus bonuses for exceptional coordination. But with the money came a leash shorter than ever. I couldn't go see my mom without notifying the Gero. Couldn't change corners, couldn't take a day off. Every movement had to be cleared through him. I was watched more than I was watching. My phone was replaced with a burner that only took calls from one encrypted line. I began waking up before sunrise, checking the city grid on a hand-drawn map we weren't allowed to photograph. I memorized street names, escape alleys, transit patterns. The boys under me, some younger, some older, looked to me for instructions. They respected me, maybe even feared me. That scared me more than anything, because they didn't realize how little power I truly had. Every word I said over the radio could result in death. Every silence could trigger suspicion. Every mistake could lead to 10 kids zipped in black bags. And yet, I felt important. That's the sickness of it. I felt useful, valued, a part of something. When I walked down the street, I didn't see civilians. I saw pieces on a chessboard I was helping control. I saw taxis that weren't just taxis. Shops that served as fronts, street vendors that whispered about incoming shipments. My world became a living surveillance system, and I was the heartbeat keeping it alive. I didn't carry a gun. I didn't need to. My weapon was information. The timing of a patrol, the rerouting of a convoy, the early detection of rivals. My voice kept operations running, kept bodies from piling up too soon. But that voice was no longer mine. One day, the Gero handed me a radio unlike any I'd seen. "Encrypted," he said. "This one connects you straight to the big ones. Don't fuck it up." I knew what that meant. I wasn't just a halcón anymore. I was now a coordinator, a middle nerve in the cartel's spinal cord. The jump terrified me. The more I rose, the more I was shackled. Freedom was an illusion, a carrot tied to the barrel of a gun. And I knew deep down that every step up in this ladder wasn't lifting me closer to the sky. It was burying me deeper into the grave. When they sent me to Manzanillo, it wasn't because I'd earned a vacation. It was because I had become too valuable to be left in the streets. The Gero didn't say much, he never did, but before I left, he handed me a radio wrapped in plastic and a small phone with a single saved number. "This one's different," he muttered. "Use it only when told. And remember, up there, it's not bullets that kill you. It's paper." At first, I didn't understand. I had spent the past year tracking police units, scanning city blocks, relaying coded alerts that could mean life or death. Paper. That sounded like a joke. But the moment I stepped onto the docks of Manzanillo, I realized I had crossed into a different world. This wasn't a war zone, it was a stage. The trucks weren't armored, they were refrigerated. The men didn't wear vests or ski masks, they wore button-down shirts and expensive watches. The violence hadn't disappeared. It had changed uniform. Here, power didn't scream it signed. I was assigned to monitor port movements, shipments, container arrivals. But not for drugs, at least not in the way most people think. The real business came in steel crates marked with customs stamps and legal documents. Some carried precursor chemicals, others minerals, fuel, electronic parts, all of them cleaned by signatures. I watched judges, politicians, port supervisors, people who looked like respectable men, shake hands with cartel operators in broad daylight. I listened in on conversations where a single stamped invoice meant bypassing an entire investigation. The paperwork was flawless. The seals were authentic. The trail looked clean. But I knew what was inside. I knew because I was now part of the chain that kept the illusion alive. One night, a convoy of Marines parked too close to one of the restricted docks. I radioed in the alert, expecting trucks, maybe a detour. Instead, within minutes, 2 black SUVs arrived, not with sicarios, but with men in suits. They had no guns, no threats, just briefcases. I watched them speak with the naval officers, shake hands, nod, and leave. The Marines drove off as if nothing had happened. No search, no questions, no report. That's when it hit me. The most powerful weapon the cartel possessed wasn't violence. It was invisibility. Not the kind that hides in shadows, but the kind that wears a smile and a signature. At night, I would walk along the dockyards, watching ships unload cargo worth millions, legally documented, federally approved, completely untouchable. My role was simple: monitor anomalies, report unusual activity, keep the flow clean. I had no idea who the shipments belonged to or where they were headed, but I knew that one bad report, one delay, one slip-up could bring down entire corridors of power. And it wouldn't be the sicarios who showed up to clean the mess. It would be lawyers, accountants, maybe even senators. There were parties, of course, celebrations when big deals went through, whiskey on private yachts, women flown in from Mexico City. But none of it felt real. The faces were too polished, the laughter too rehearsed. It was a performance. And I, still wearing my soccer hoodie and carrying a scratched-up radio, was just a stagehand behind the curtains. The higher I climbed, the less I belonged. I was part of the organization, yes, but I was also trapped inside it. I couldn't walk away. I couldn't speak out. Every contract I saw, every handshake I witnessed, every container I watched roll through without inspection was a thread binding me tighter to the center of the web. And the deeper I went, the more I understood CJNG didn't just move product. It moved systems. It bought time. It erased history. And I was one of its most trusted shadows. Not because I was loyal, but because I had seen too much to be allowed anywhere else. It was supposed to be a routine surveillance. A possible meeting, nothing more. The call came around midnight. Eyes on the hotel near the beach. Possible Sinaloa movement. Keep distance. No heroics. That's what they told me. No heroics. But nothing about that night would be remembered as ordinary. I arrived with 2 other halcons just past 2:30 a.m. We parked a block away and set up with binoculars and radios low to the ground behind a rusted food stand. The hotel looked quiet, too quiet. Then the trucks came. 4 black SUVs, windows dark, engines growling like animals held on chains. They pulled up to the front entrance and armed men spilled out like oil across the pavement. They weren't locals. Their posture, their gear, the way they scanned the street. These were high-tier hitters, and they weren't here to negotiate. Before we could even report, the order came through the radio. Hold position. The convoy is en route. No contact until arrival. Convoy. That meant CJNG was sending its own. And when they said convoy, they meant firepower. I felt the hairs on my neck rise. My hands were slick with sweat. Then, not 5 minutes later, the street went dark, headlights off, engines humming. CJNG trucks rolled in 6 deep, all armored, all marked with the symbols only we recognized. They pulled up surrounding the hotel like wolves encircling prey. Then silence, a heavy, choking silence. And then the first shot broke it all. Windows exploded, rifles screamed. The night turned into a living hell of thunder and flame. I dropped behind a concrete trash bin, hands over my head, radio between my teeth, trying to speak and breathe at the same time. Code red. 2 units. Movement north. My voice cracked. My body trembled. But the battle didn't wait for nerves. Bullets flew like insects, ricocheting off walls, shattering glass, ripping through plaster. Grenades turned balconies into smoke clouds. Inside the hotel, I saw silhouettes fall, dragged left, bleeding in doorways. No sirens came. No civilians screamed. The city had learned long ago that when the monsters fight, you lock your doors and pray you're not in the path. Amid the chaos, I saw him, a young man, maybe 19, crawling across the lobby floor, one leg trailing blood. He reached for the exit. One of ours stepped forward, calm, methodical, and without hesitation, ended him. A single shot, no words, just duty. I couldn't breathe, couldn't blink. I kept my radio against my lips, repeating coordinates, like a machine, pretending that speaking made me useful, pretending that usefulness meant survival. When the last shots rang out, the hotel was a shell of fire and smoke. Bodies were everywhere, on the steps, in the cars, slumped over balcony railings. The radio buzzed again. Good work. Gavilan 4. Hold position until further notice. Good work. That's what they called it. I had done nothing but watch people kill each other, and they called it good work. I sat behind that trash bin for what felt like hours, heart pounding in my ears, the smell of gunpowder and burning wood clinging to my clothes like a second skin. That night, something in me broke not from fear, not from horror, but from the realization that I had passed another test. I had stayed. I had watched. I had followed orders, and in their eyes that meant I belonged. I wasn't just a boy with a radio anymore. I was part of the system, a piece of the execution, a silent witness to cleansing fire. That night, I learned the cartel didn't just trade drugs or favors or even information. It traded in fear, manufactured it, weaponized it. That was the real currency, and I was now one of its most faithful dealers. The day I decided to run, I didn't tell anyone. Not my mother, not the Gero, not even the mirror. I'd been thinking about it for months, stacking bills in the soles of my sneakers, folding notes into cigarette boxes, memorizing bus routes, tracking security rotations, like I was still reporting, but this time, the target was me. After the hotel, I couldn't breathe right. Every night, I'd lie awake hearing radios crackle in my dreams, flashes of gunfire behind my eyelids. I knew I wasn't going to make it out if I waited. I had seen what happened to halcones who got scared. One was found hanging from a bridge, another buried in a field with his eyes cut out and a cell phone shoved into his mouth. Traitors didn't get trials. They got messages. So I didn't plan a clean escape. I planned a desperate one. When the Gero assigned me to a routine convoy cargo transfer from Manzanillo to Michoacan, I knew it was my window. The pretext was simple. I'd be part of the advance team clearing checkpoints and reporting traffic ahead. We had encrypted radios, new vehicles, full security. But even the tightest system has blind spots, especially when no one thinks one of their own is looking for a way out. I kept my plan simple. At a fuel stop outside Colima, while the others checked tire pressure and smoked behind the station, I stepped away from the vehicle with my radio pressed to my ear, pretending I was chasing a better signal. I walked 10 meters, then 15, then 20, every step, feeling like it echoed across the pavement. My heart hammered so loud, I thought it would give me away. I didn't run. Running looks guilty. I just walked slow, steady, like I was following a script. I didn't look back. I didn't check if anyone called my name. I passed the fuel station and disappeared down a side road, ducking into the shadows behind a row of parked cargo trucks. Minutes later, headlights lit the road behind me. I dropped flat on the dirt hard in my throat, watching as the convoy rolled past without slowing down. They hadn't noticed. Or they hadn't decided to react yet. I waited until the taillights were gone, then sprinted across the highway to the other side where a bus terminal flickered in the distance like a dying star. I boarded a midnight coach to Guadalajara, paying in cash, keeping my head low, hoodie up. The driver looked at me like he knew something was off. Maybe he did. Maybe he'd seen boys like me before, shaking pale, clinging to a plastic bag, and a story they couldn't tell. When we pulled out of the station, I felt the first breath of air in years that didn't taste like gunpowder. But I didn't relax. Every passing truck looked like a CJNG vehicle. Every stop felt like a trap. I didn't sleep. I didn't eat. When we arrived at the city, I stepped off the bus and vanished into the morning crowds. No radio, no handler, no orders. Just me and the pounding echo of every name I had ever reported. I changed my clothes in a public restroom. I tossed the burner phone into a sewer drain. For the first time in years, I didn't know what frequency to listen to. And it terrified me. Because even though I had escaped the convoy, I hadn't escaped the system. The cartel didn't need fences to keep you inside. It used fear, memory, silence. I was out, but I was still breathing like someone inside a cage. I live far from Manzanillo now, far from the port, far from the voices, far from the names. I used to whisper into radios like spells that summoned death. I rent a room behind a mechanic shop, fixing old scooters and broken carburetors. My hands are stained with grease instead of blood, but some nights they still shake. I don't talk much. I don't ask questions. I don't make friends. People think I'm just another quiet kid trying to make rent. They don't know that I once coordinated surveillance across Guadalajara, that I once held a radio with a direct line to men who owned judges, prosecutors, and ministers, that I used to track convoys loaded with chemicals worth more than a year's supply of cocaine. I keep notebooks now, not for coordinates, not for codes, for memories. Every name I heard, every face I watched disappear, every lie I told my mother when she asked why my voice sounded different. I write them all down, not because I plan to publish them, not because I think justice will ever come, but because I need to remember. I need to carry it, all of it, so that at least one person in this country doesn't forget what it means to survive by becoming part of a machine that kills people without ever touching them. I escaped, yes, but the war followed me. It moved into my dreams, into the sound of distant tires at night, into the silence between phone rings. I don't wear a watch anymore. I spent too long timing things, arrivals, departures, attacks, deals. Now I try not to measure the hours at all. Some days I think about turning myself in, telling the truth, giving names. But then I remember what the Mencho said, you betray me. And it's not just you who dies, it's everyone you love. And I don't know anymore if that was a threat or just a fact. Because CJNG didn't just control routes or soldiers. They controlled stories, realities. They turned paper into armor and fear into law. People still think El Mencho is a narco, a meth lord, a fugitive. That's the surface. That's the image they let the world consume. The real Mencho. What I saw with my own eyes is something else. He is a system, a phantom made of money signatures and silence. You'll never see his fingerprints. You'll never hear his voice. But if you've ever wondered why a container full of precursors vanishes in daylight, why a case against a port official dies before it starts, why a judge suddenly retires before sentencing, then you've already met him. You just didn't know it. My name doesn't matter. It never did. What matters is the truth. And here it is. I was a halcón. I watched. I followed. I obeyed. I helped build an empire that doesn't leave bruises on your body. It leaves them on your soul. I wasn't innocent, but I survived. And if you're reading this, maybe that means something. Maybe it means you still have a choice. If you're a parent, pay attention. If you're a teacher, look closer. If you're just a kid like I was, wondering why the world feels like it's already decided your fate, listen carefully. The first payment is always the first chain. And the real boss. He's not the man with the gun. He's the one who never has to pull the trigger.